This mistake I see buyers make is not understanding the earnest money deposit and ending the contracts. So the earnest money deposit, also known as the EMD, is a deposit that the buyer puts down a few days after their offer is accepted to show the seller they're serious. So in the buyer's offer, it will say the amount of EMD they want to do. It's typically 1 to 3% of the purchase price, and also how soon they can deposit it to the title company after acceptance. So what I mean by a lot of buyers not understanding how this works is they think the EMD is just their backup plan if they can't get out of the contract for any of these contingencies we just talked about. Like someone might have the approach of waiving the financing contingency to make their offer more competitive, then thinking to themselves, if I get denied financing, I'll just let the seller keep my EMD and we'll both move on. Now it can work out that way if the seller agrees, but it doesn't always. Let me show you how this is stated in our contracts. So here's what the deposit section of the purchase agreement says. Up here it states the amount the purchaser is willing to do and also how long it will take them to give it to the title company. And down here it states the deposit shall not be released by the escrow agent until credited toward the purchase price at settlement. Seller and purchaser agree in writing as to its disposition. A court of competent jurisdiction orders a disbursement of the funds or dispersed in such manner as authorized by the terms of this agreement subject to Virginia law and or VREB regulations. So as far as disbursement according to this agreement, nowhere does it say the seller can keep the EMD if the buyer defaults. It only lets the buyer have the EMD back if one of these contingencies we talked about is triggered. If we go to the default section, it only lays out that the defaulting member must pay all brokerage commissions, court fees, and any expenses incurred by the non-defaulting party, plus whatever else they want to sue them for. Again, your local area may be different. Let's go back to the EMD section. So if the buyer wants to back out of this contract without a valid contingency, they have the options of the parties agreeing in writing to its disposition, or a court decides if the parties want to take it there. Okay, now let me show you what that agreement in writing looks like. This is a summary of the release of the purchase agreement. So paragraph 1 lays out that they mutually agree to release each other of any kind of liability related to the purchase agreement and pretty much acknowledges both parties get to move on. Then it lays out who gets the EMD. But underneath in paragraph 2, we have that this is between the seller and purchaser only and doesn't release them from having to pay any commissions. So if we had a legitimate default, I showed you in the purchase agreement that the defaulting party has to pay both sides of the commission. Around here, that's usually 6% of the sale price. So that's $30,000 total on a $500,000 transaction. So the buyer may not be able to just let the seller keep their EMD. It might be that plus the commissions if one or both brokerages want to pursue that.